Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today we're tackling a giant, St. Augustine of Hippo. We're aiming to pull out some really surprising essential insights.
Yeah, Augustine is, well, he's often just seen as this ancient philosopher or theologian, right?
Yeah.
But his impact, it's everywhere. Politics, psychology, ethics, it's huge.
And we're diving into that tension in his life. He wasn't just the deep thinker in his study.
No, not at all. He was also this really pragmatic, hands-on bishop out there in North Africa dealing with, you know, violent heresies, Roman law, real-world stuff.
So our sources map this duality really well, and our goal is to see how his big ideas, especially from City of God, actually played out in his day-to-day political and legal battles.
Exactly. And that's where you hit the kind of core academic debate, this idea of the two Augustines.
Right.
You know, the young guy, the Christian philosopher before 396 AD, full of enthusiasm, writing those early dialogues, and then the more mature, maybe battle-hardened theologian and clergyman after 396.
Peter Brown's biography really pushed that idea, didn't it? Focusing on that early genius.
It did. Very influential. But I think we kind of miss the point if we don't see how his philosophy was constantly being tested and, frankly, changed by the sheer reality of being a bishop on the ground.
Okay, so let's start with the mind, the inner self. He needed a new way to think, almost, and he actually coined a term for it.
He did. Soliloquy. It literally means talking to oneself.
Oh.
Augustine was, well, pretty skeptical about big public debates.
Why was that?
He just found they got derailed constantly. Noise, distractions, people's egos getting in the way, emotions.
Right, chaos.
Yeah. So for him, serious thinking, getting closer to truth, meant turning away from all that external stuff and having a conversation with yourself inside your own head.
And this wasn't just like quiet time. He gave those inner words real weight, didn't he? Metaphysically speaking.
Absolutely. He believed that the words you form in your mind, the concepts, they're actually higher up in the communication chain than the words you speak out loud.
Closer to the source.
Yeah, closer to the ultimate truth, the Word of God. Because, you know, they haven't been muddied yet by the messiness of external human language and interaction.
Okay, that kind of sets up his certainty about his own existence then. He said he knew I exist as clearly as, like, knowing he was alive or knowing he wanted or didn't want something.
And what's really interesting there is you hear that I exist, and you immediately think, Descartes, I think, therefore I am.
Right, the cogito.
But Augustine's point is actually a bit different. He wasn't trying to prove his existence with logic. It was more like this awareness, this knowing I am, it's undeniable, foundational. But you can't really trace how you know it back to some formal piece of knowledge.
It's like his example of time. You know what it is, you experience it, but try defining it.
Exactly. You can't quite pin it down with definitions. It's a profound awareness, not just learned information. And that distinction led him to split reason itself into two kinds. He talks about this in De Trinitate.
Okay, the two ratios. This seems key to bridging the theoretical and the practical for him.
Totally. So you have ratio scientia, let's call that knowledge, and ratio sapienti, wisdom.
Knowledge first. What's that cover?
Knowledge deals with all the temporary changeable things in the world. It's a practical know-how. Running a city, managing your affairs, the civic virtues like prudence, courage, justice, the stuff you need to function down here.
The toolkit for the earthly city, basically.
Precisely. But then wisdom, ratio sapientiae, that deals with the eternal, the unchanging God. And crucially, it's not something you just figure out by studying harder.
Okay, so how do you get it?
It's a grace-led conversion of the mind. It's about turning away from presumption, from relying only on yourself and turning towards God. Humility is key.
That sounds like a warning we could still use today, you know? Don't mistake competence for actual wisdom or goodness.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Augustine hammered this home again and again, often quoting St. Paul. Knowledge puffs up, but love goes up. Meaning, if you've got all the know-how, all the ratio scientiae, but you lack the wisdom, the love to orient it correctly, well, your soul just inflates with pride and self-reliance. And for Augustine, that's the root of so much trouble.
Pride, the ultimate barrier to truth.
Okay.
And this connects to his idea of divine illumination, right? If wisdom needs grace, where does our ability to grasp truth come from initially?
Yeah, and people often misunderstand illumination. They think of it like God shining an external spotlight on our minds.
But that's not quite it.
Not how our sources frame Augustine's view. It's more like God is the source of an intrinsic light within us, an innate capacity built in to grasp higher truths, even the nature of God.
So it's part of our design, like intellectual eyesight.
Exactly. But, you know, thanks to the fall, that eyesight is blurry now. The capacity's there inherently, but we need to recover it. And that happens gradually, through faith, humility, following Christ's example. That clears the vision.
Okay, that humility point sets the stage perfectly for tackling City of God. Because if human reason, even at its best, is prone to self-reliance without grace, what does that mean for all those famous virtues from the pagan world, the Roman and Greek ideals?
Right, and this is where Augustine gets, well, pretty controversial for a lot of people. In City of God, he basically argues that any virtue that isn't properly oriented towards God isn't really a virtue at all. It's actually a kind of vice.
Wow, that's huge. He's saying potentially centuries of philosophy, maybe 288 different schools he counted, if they came from a purely pagan mindset. Their ideas of goodness were flawed.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
He's saying all that classical stuff, Roman duty, Greek courage, civic loyalty, if it's not rooted in love for God, its ultimate source is probably corrupt.
Corrupt how? Like fake?
Not necessarily fake in its outward effect. He could look at someone like Regulus, that Roman general you mentioned. Incredible courage, right? Choosing to go back to Carthage to be tortured rather than break his oath. Augustine could admire that. But he worried about the source. Was Regulus really motivated by duty to something higher? Or was it actually self-love, pride, a desire for earthly fame, glory, a misunderstanding of what true justice even is?
So the actions might look good, but the inner motivation, the why, could be fundamentally off. Dangerously good, you called it. Making earthly wisdom seem noble when it's really self-deception.
Exactly. And he didn't just leave it at philosophy. He pointed fingers directly at Roman culture. He argued that demons were actively involved in corrupting Rome.
Demons? How?
Specifically, through the collusion between Roman state religion and, wait for it, the theater. He claimed demons actually ordered these stage plays, often filled with obscenities, which people then imitated in their own lives. He saw a direct line from that to Rome's moral decline.
That's a really sharp cultural critique using theology to explain political reality. It makes perfect sense then why he'd reject the old idea, like from Cicero, that humans can just decide to be just and good using their own reason and willpower.
Absolutely. For Augustine, after the fall, our reason is wounded. Ignorance, weakness of will. We just can't achieve true justice or virtue reliably on our own steam. It has to be a gift. Grace. To overcome those flaws.
Okay, speaking of will and action, let's pivot from the philosophical city to the very real, very messy political world of North Africa. Augustine the bishop wasn't just writing theory, he was in the trenches.
He really was. A pastor, yes, but also a fierce polemicist, especially against the Donatists.
And they were a big deal in Africa at the time, right? Not some small fringe group.
Huge. They were likely the majority of Christians in North Africa in the late 300s. Powerful, organized, sometimes violent. Dealing with them shows this really fascinating shift in how the Catholic Church started using the tools of the state.
But Augustine himself wasn't traveling to the imperial court in Italy or anything, was he? He stayed in Africa after 388.
Right, and that's what's interesting. He didn't have to go himself.
How did they manage the legal side then, getting the emperor involved?
Delegation. He had allies, other bishops like Basidius and Alypius, who were the legal eagles, you could say. They were the ones doing the hard travel, the intense lobbying at the imperial court, the consistory. And they were effective.
Effective how? What did they achieve?
They managed to get the emperors to issue some pretty severe laws against the Donatists. We're talking heavy fines, confiscation of property, stripping them of legal rights, using the Roman legal system as a tool.
So, using state power to suppress a rival Christian group, that sounds harsh.
It was. But here's the twist, the really sort of cunning part of their strategy.
Okay.
They didn't actually intend for those harsh penalties to always be fully enforced. This strategy seems to have really come together after Basidius had an earlier run-in with a Donatist bishop named Crispinus.
What was the strategy then?
The Catholic bishops, including Augustine's allies, would push hard to get these severe laws passed. They'd then prosecute the Donatists, maybe take them to court, to establish legally that they were in violation and did deserve the punishment.
Right, establish maximum leverage.
Exactly. But then, after securing the conviction or the legal liability, they would often intervene with the local Roman administrators, the guys actually responsible for carrying out the sentences, and argue for leniency.
Wait, so get the big stick, prove you can use it, and then ask the governor not to hit them so hard. Why?
The goal wasn't necessarily to crush them financially or execute them. It was coercion, yes. To apply pressure, show them the power of the empire was now behind the Catholic Church, and persuade them to, well, convert.
Yeah.
Come back into the fold. But they wanted to do it without, say, bankrupting entire communities or resorting to widespread violence. It was legally sophisticated pressure.
That tension, demanding justice, but then begging for mercy, it's just incredible. And you see it so clearly in that letter Augustine wrote to Marcellinus, the tribune.
Oh, yeah. That's a powerful example. Here, these Donatists and their more radical wing, the Circumcellions, convicted of incredibly brutal crimes. They had murdered one Catholic priest, horribly mutilated another, just awful violence.
And Augustine writes to the Roman official, arguing against executing them, even though they attacked his own clergy.
He pleads for clemency, for mercy. It's astonishing restraint.
Uh-huh.
But importantly, he doesn't say the death penalty isn't deserved. He's very careful. He basically says, look, if their original break from the church, the sin of schism, was a voluntary choice, then yeah, technically the punishment fits the crime according to human law. But he urges Marcellinus to imitate God's patience, not human harshness. It shows how this whole episcopal culture had become really savvy about law and power, using it strategically while still prioritizing, ultimately, conversion and reconciliation over simple revenge.
It's just a remarkable snapshot of his theology meeting brutal reality.
Okay, let's leave the earthly city's complexities for a moment and look towards the end game, the resurrected body. Augustine thought a lot about this.
He did. And he was really insistent on continuity. He believed our resurrected bodies wouldn't be totally different things. They'd be substantially the same as our mortal bodies. He even says every part of the body's substance will be restored. But obviously, massively upgraded, right? What do we lose in the process?
Oh yeah, big upgrade. We lose all the bad stuff. Evil, obviously. But also inactivity, idleness, pointless toil, feeling constrained, decay, being subject to necessity, having hidden agendas.
And physical flaws, too.
All of them.
Yeah.
Defects, deformities, ugliness, weakness, sluggishness, corruption, all gone. The resurrected body is meant to be supremely beautiful, vigorous, perfect.
Okay, and this is the detail I just find completely fascinating, the thing that sticks with you. If everything is perfected and functional limitations are gone, what specific body parts does he say remain, even though they don't have a purpose anymore in heaven?
Right, this is classic Augustine. He mentions things like our internal organs, even though we won't need digestion.
Yeah.
Men's beards and nipples. Women's reproductive organs.
Why keep them if they're, like, functionless? Beards and nipples aren't exactly vital organs even now for men.
Because, for Augustine, they are part of the body's original intended substance and form. They contribute to its overall beauty and completeness, its aesthetic perfection, even if their earthly use is gone. Reproduction isn't needed. Feeding infants isn't needed. But the parts remain as features of the perfected, beautiful whole.
That level of specific detail in theology is just wild. So bringing it all together, from coining soliloquy to the legal maneuvering in Africa to the eternal status of nipples, what's the big takeaway from Augustine?
I think it's that he was this incredible synthesizer. He absorbed everything the philosophical world had to offer, Platonism, skepticism, the works. But his ultimate conclusion was always that human flourishing, both inside ourselves, achieving wisdom, and in the world, achieving justice, it just isn't possible without help from outside, without grace.
And that grace works through
faith and humility. Our own reason, our ratio scientii, is necessary. It's a tool we have to use. But it's divine intervention, grace, that truly redirects the will, illuminates the mind, and sustains us in virtue.
humility and faith unlock the door to real understanding.
Yeah. And that brings us to maybe a final thought to leave you with. Augustine spent a lot of time thinking about just the basic fact of existence, the will to be.
Okay.
He pointed out something interesting. If you're incredibly unhappy, so unhappy you think you'd prefer not to exist, well, you're trying to choose nothing. And the human will can't actually choose non-being. It's a logical impossibility for the will.
You can't truly will your own non-existence.
Right. But he flips that limitation into something positive. He says, look, the very fact that you still exist, that you still possess that fundamental will to be, even in misery, that's the crucial first step.
The starting point.
The starting point for rising above it. By taking that innate will to exist and directing your focus towards God, towards Him who exists in the highest possible way, that's how you can overcome unhappiness. It's like an invitation, really, to consider that the basic gift of being is itself incredibly valuable no matter what state you're in.
A really profound place to start thinking about how to face, well, anything. Thank you. This has been a fascinating deep dive into Augustine.
Absolutely. Always great to talk about him.